Hello and welcome to everyone watching, and thank you for joining our interview series here at Formula Careers. We're aiming to provide helpful information for you to access the career path that you want in motorsport. Our first interviewee is Tim Silvey. Tim is the founder of Motormouth, which is a podcast, website and app that produces motorsport related content. As well as that, he does sponsorship and marketing consultancy for various motorsport teams and entities, but I'll let him talk about that. Hi Tim, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks, Izzy. Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Good, I'm good, thank you. So let's start off by talking about what you currently do. So what are your roles and what do you do as part of them?
So the day job, if you like, is there's a few things. I guess the thing that takes up a lot of my time is sports sponsorship, mainly in the Formula One and Formula E space, although done a little bit of golf over the last few years as well, but predominantly F1 and Formula E. And I do that through some consultancy that I do with a company called Right Formula Sports Marketing, who are a consultancy in London, based in Vauxhall, although based all over the place at the moment because everyone's working from home. Yeah, it's dealing with sponsorship activation for different brands in motorsport, essentially with them. And consulting 3 to 4 days a week. And then the rest of my time is split between lots of different activities, whether it's Motormouth, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and other bits and bobs I do through Silvey Sports, which is a company I set up about maybe 8 years ago now to facilitate different projects, whether that be me doing something on my own, or for example, at the London Olympics, we ramped up to about 50 or so staff for about 6 or 8 months, and then back down to me when the contract ended. And lots of stuff in the Middle East with boxing and Formula One and various other bits and pieces. Pretty wide and varied. And then I do some other consultancy, weirdly with a transport company, but it's an events transport company that does a lot of sporting events. So I do a bit of business development for them. They're based in the Middle East as well. So it's busy, and we have a mobile bar. So if anyone needs a mobile bar, then come and see me. I know parties aren't really the done thing at the moment, but we bought a little horse box and converted it into a bar. So if anyone needs one when lockdown's finished, look me up.
I think a mobile bar could provide some very good lockdown birthdays.
Yes, exactly. So feel free to come and check us out at Silvey and Squires. Thank you.
So I presume it will be very varied, but what does a general working week look like for you?
I mean, basically, 3 or 4 days a week, it is full on with Right Formula and working with, at the moment, with them. I've been with them for about 3 years-ish, and historically, it's been brands like Epsom, who sponsored or sponsor Mercedes in F1, Hilton, who sponsor McLaren, or Hilton Honours, their Honours program, sponsor McLaren. And I worked with them on the various golf properties that they had, and now most recently with a company called Genpact in Formula E, who sponsor Envision Virgin Racing. So most of the time I'm doing Genpact's sponsorship activation of EVR. And that takes up the day, and the very early mornings and the very late nights are taken up by Motormouth, and then anything I can fit in between is taken up with other Silvey Sports consultancy or contract work, whether that be in the UK or abroad. So it's a fairly busy schedule, but it's nice. I wouldn't have it any other way.
For people who might not know, kind of what is sponsorship activation? What exactly are you doing for those brands?
So once a brand will either pay a big chunk of money or provide some sort of value in other ways, or a combination of the two, to obtain sponsorship assets and rights from a rights holder. So a rights holder could be anyone from a Formula One team right down to a grassroots carter who is looking for a bit of local sponsorship to get their career going. Once they've put that deal together, and the rights holder, i.e. the sports team, have created a list of assets. Then those assets are passed over to the brand. The brand then, more often than not, will look up a sports marketing agency or consultancy firm and contract them to deliver marketing content or PR or whatever story they want to tell through those assets they've been given. So, whether it be driver time or senior management time or logos on a car or point of sale activities, whatever it might be, those assets can be leveraged to create compelling stories for brands to sell their products, or not necessarily sell their products. It might be something completely different, but sell their products, raise awareness, whatever their business objectives are. So that's sponsorship activation in a nutshell.
Great. And what is the best thing about your job?
I'd say prior to lockdown, it's probably the travel, because you get to go to a lot of interesting countries and cities and see some cool things and meet interesting people and go to interesting racetracks. So that is a nice perk of it, I suppose, even though it is hard work. But and I guess that it's, for me, it's the best thing that that now in my current, as we speak today, the thing I like the most is that I've done it for long enough now to know what I'm doing. So I don't feel like I'm a novice anymore, or like I'm an imposter, or don't know what I'm talking about. I feel like I could be thrown into a scenario and pick it up quickly and enjoy it, because I feel confident that I know how to deliver. So whereas 10 or 15 years ago, I might have, I probably had a very different outlook on it, and it more of a sort of panic, like you do when it's something new, and feeling out of my depth a lot when I started out. Now I feel very comfortable and enjoy being in different situations and learning new things and bringing young people through and helping them in their careers. So I'd say those are probably my favorite bits.
So now we've done today, we're going to go back to the beginning. So what did you study at school, college, university? So what A-levels did you do? Then what did you do at uni?
So I left school with very few GCSEs, I think probably 6, something like that. I still don't have maths or science as a GCSE. Failed them and just kept failing, and then it just couldn't go on forever, so I had to move on. So I didn't have the qualifications to get onto an A-level course. So I did a GMVQ. I don't know whether they still exist, which is, I think at the time, was the equivalent of maybe 1.5 or 2 A-levels, something like that. And I scraped through that and did general studies A-level, which is the most ridiculous subject on the planet. And I think I got a C in that, and then scraped through with a pass or something on the GMVQ. So pretty poor up until that point. And then had to go through clearing to get into a university course. I took a gap year, travelled in New Zealand, came back, thought, what am I going to do? Might as well go to uni, because I didn't have a plan. And managed to blag my way into a university called, at the time, it's now called Birmingham University College. And at the time, it had a much less cool name, which was Birmingham College of Food, Tourism and Creative Studies. And the first time I saw it was my first day of term, and it wasn't great, which is to be expected based on my results, I suppose. And didn't do very well there either. But what I did do was spend a year in industry as part of a sort of sandwich course. So I went to America for a year, and that's when everything changed for me, because I discovered work, and that I enjoyed working far more than education, and particularly the British education system. So for me personally, I wasn't necessarily built for education, but I was definitely built for hard work. And that's when I started earning money, and I thought, this is more me. This is much more educational for me. This sinks in, whereas school didn't. And I'm not saying that it's the same for everybody, because I think if you are going into certain professions, education and the school system is brilliant. For me, it wasn't. And the value I got out of life was through work.
So you did your sandwich year. So where did you do that? And what was that like for you? And did you do any other sort of work experience or extracurriculars while you were studying?
So that was in America, in Florida, for a company called Lowe's, which owned parts of Universal. So they owned several hotels around that Universal complex in Orlando. And I worked for 3 of the hotels, mainly one called the Portofino Bay Hotel, which is a replica of Portofino Bay in Europe. And they had the Hard Rock Hotel and the Grand Pacific, I think it was called. So I flipped between the 3 of them, and I was just simply a recreation manager. So I was looking after all the outdoor facilities. So the pools, the bars, the outdoor restaurants, the staff, and all that sort of stuff. It was the first proper job I had, and I loved it. Like I say, did it for a year, had a brilliant time, learned a lot about business and how big organizations operate. And when I came back from there, again, I wasn't fussed about uni. So I basically dropped out before I could switch on to the degree course, because I wasn't on a degree course. I was on another vocational thing. So left, and then got a job in recruitment, like you do when you don't know what else to do. So I went and worked for Michael Page for a year, and the sporting side came a little later.
And when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Ooh. Everyone always gives such different answers, and I love it. It's my favorite question.
I don't know. I mean, probably either a tennis player. I played quite a good standard of tennis, and that was, I saw that as a career because I thought it would be quite fun. Nothing educational or academic for sure, because I didn't have that in me. But I think probably either a tennis player or a tennis coach, which I did for a little while. Or my big brother was in a band, and I thought that was really cool. So I would have quite liked to have been in the band. But I honestly had no aspirations. Like I was a terrible child. I was a nice boy, but I had no get up and go and no drive. I played a lot of sport, but I had no idea what I wanted to do career-wise. And I really envy people who are sort of 16, 17, 18, even in their early 20s, who are focused on what they want to do and achieve, and they know what they want. I had no idea at that stage. And Harry, who I present our podcast with, is 23 now. He was 22 when we started the podcast. And he's so focused and driven and knows exactly what he wants to do. And I just find it amazing that someone could be that together at that age. I certainly wasn't. So I think, I could make something up about some great thing that I wanted to be. But the truthful answer is I had absolutely no idea.
My truthful answer is that I wanted to be a fairy. So,
well, there you go. Why not?
Exactly. Everything's possible.
Yeah.
So now we've done the beginning, and what you do today, we're going to fill in some of the middle. So before what you're doing now, kind of what did you do? How's your career path evolved?
So I got lucky in the first instance. So I was off doing this recruitment gig in London with Michael Page, working in Victoria, which was good in the sense that it was work, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed the whole commuting thing from Surrey up to London Bridge and Victoria, where I was working. So, and I was wearing a tie, and I felt important, and that was all good. And I did all right today. I'm fairly okay at sales, and I was doing pretty well. Like, it started on no money at all. I think I was on about 12 and a half, 13 grand. Plus commission, but it was fine. But I played cricket with a guy called Jonathan Bodansky, who owned a Formula One sponsorship agency called Bodansky Sponsorship Limited, which later became BSL, and then BSL World, and then BSL Middle East, and then eventually was sold on. But he said to me, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm doing recruitment. It's all right. It's okay." And he was like, "Well, you like sport, you like motorsport, and watching it. Why don't you come and do 3 months with me, see how you get on, and we'll play it by ear." So I did 3 months with him, and it was a probation, and immediately enjoyed it and thought, "Yes, this is finally I found something that I enjoy." And worked really hard, and the 3 months turned into 6 or 7 years. And I think I started there when I was 23, something like that. And then by the time I left, I was a company director, shareholder, and had opened an office in the Middle East and traveled the world and activated some of the biggest Formula One partnerships out there. So it was an amazing baptism of fire. Did nearly every race for that period, plus some golf and football and rugby and other bits and pieces. It was full on. Very different era in terms of sponsorship. But it was really cool, really good fun, learned a lot, and then stayed there until I set up on my own.
Great. And what has been your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome that challenge? Can be something sort of personal, like fear of failure, or a specific thing that you did in a job or anything like that.
I do have fear of failure, but it doesn't affect me that much. I don't mind the risk of failure. I've had major challenges, you know, various things from, I guess, I went through a period about 6 years managing racing drivers, including one in Formula One and some in World Endurance and some of the junior categories. And we had a good roster of drivers. That collapsed once overnight through no fault of mine. It was an investment issue. I went from earning great money to no money at all. I had to move out of the house. That was pretty stressful. But even that didn't faze me. It wasn't like I'm going to get down in the dumps. It's just one of those things. And I think when you set up on your own, you've got to expect these things every now and again, or at least these sort of challenges. I suppose setting up on my own was a big challenge. I left a very comfortable position at BSL. Everything was sort of mapped out, and I was living in the Middle East, in Dubai, and didn't need to set up on my own, but always felt like I should. So that was probably a big challenge, setting up Silvey Sports in 2012. And yeah, that was probably the biggest hump in terms of I've got to get over this fear of jumping into something unknown when I'm living in the Middle East, having a great time in the sunshine, earning really good money, to reset and go back to zero. So that's probably the biggest challenge, but I'm glad I did it. And that decision that I made has led on to so many exciting things that I would never, ever have dreamt of seeing or doing had I stayed where I was.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if these two things might link quite closely together, but what's been your proudest moment in your career?
I guess, yeah, I mean, starting Silvey Sports was a nice moment. Certainly seeing the development of Motormouth has made me very proud, because, you know, that started from an idea and has developed into something much bigger already than I ever thought it could. And that's really pleasing. The drive, I mean, there's a few things thinking about it, you know, looking back over the last sort of 15 years, taking on a Formula One driver in Max Chilton, albeit, you know, he was at the back of the grid, but he's still an F1 driver. And he was there for a few years, and managing him and his career was a proud moment. Felt like I was sort of making inroads. The Olympics was big, you know. That was the first gig I got after I set up Silvey Sports in 2012. We immediately got a contract with the Olympics, like I said, for about 50 staff to manage, or to work with a bunch of different agencies in London to manage some transportation for athletes and sponsors, which was huge. It was an enormous project. So that was a great thing to kick off with. So a few things, but I suppose the proudest thing for me at the moment is I would say Motormouth and the development of that, and the people I've got involved, and the growth of it as it sort of starts to become more than just me, you know, it becomes an actual entity, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And what is the best thing that you did to get where you are today? If you could pick one thing that you were like, yes, that definitely was a key moment, what would it be?
I guess, I mean, the key moment was making that transition in 2012 from employee to self-employment. But I think, you know, generally speaking, it's probably a few things. I mean, work ethic, enthusiasm. There's lots of things that I bark on about on you know, these sorts of things and webinars about being enthusiastic and, you know, taking every opportunity, even when it doesn't seem that relevant, and making the best of a situation, putting yourself in a position where you have the opportunity to progress, and hard work. And I've said this before, but I don't mean hard work in the sense of getting up at 5 and finishing work at midnight. You know, working hard but efficiently, and using common sense. I mean, I could go on for hours about it, but I think, you know, you've got to create opportunities for yourself, and then, you know, you'll get lucky every now and again, but the only way you're going to get lucky is by putting yourself in the right positions. Yeah, I think, you know, there's lots of other things, but those would be some of the top line ones.
When I've been doing interviews for Formula Careers before, people often mention soft skills as something that are really important, but something that when you're so focused on your education, it's quite easy to overlook. So how can people develop their soft skills?
Well, for me, soft skills have been really important because, as I said, I'm not academic in the slightest. And I had terrible dyslexia in specialist classes when I was young. So I haven't got an academic bone in my body. So I've had to have soft skills to progress, and it's so important, particularly in an industry like mine, which is very much a people industry, and networking is a massive part of it. You've got to have those interpersonal skills, and sometimes they can be taught. Often they're just in you or they're not. You know, you might deal with someone who's fantastic at their job, but if they just don't have that social or interpersonal skill set, they're going to struggle in certain areas. You know, my work is now very much, you know, well, is on the agency and consultancy side, it's all dealing with people, dealing with the client, you know, making sure the client's happy and delivering for that client. And if you don't have the interpersonal skills to be able to have that relationship with the client, you're not going to get very far. And equally, you know, as you'll know, with podcasting and hosting interviews with people, if you're moving into that media world, you have to have a certain amount of interpersonal or soft skills. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. And it can be taught, because a lot of it comes down to confidence. And if you can get your head around the idea of just thinking, you know, what's the worst that can happen? Let's go for it. Let's talk to that person, or you know, let's walk up to someone I don't know at a conference and just start talking and see where it leads. You know, if you can get over that, then you're halfway there. But I do think it's just in a lot of people. So it's, for me, soft skills have been the thing that have carried me through my career. And I'm biased because of my lack of academic prowess. But, you know, for me personally speaking, if I didn't have soft skills, I'd be screwed. I don't know what I would have done. It would have been a disaster. Who knows? It's definitely allowed me to progress in my career quicker than I would have done had I not had some of those soft skills.
Have you got any little tips and tricks for something like networking, which is kind of important in any area of motorsport, I think. But sometimes I think young people can find it quite daunting.
Yeah, which I totally get. It is daunting, but again, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, you've got to force yourself. You know, whether you're at a conference of 200 people on your own, and I know that feeling of standing there, sipping a coffee and eating a croissant, thinking, "Come on, just go and talk to that person over there," and then someone else beats you to it, and you think, "Oh no, they know that person in it." But you've got to get over it, and the only way you're going to get over it is to keep putting yourself in those situations. Face to face anyway, but there are other ways you can do it. I mean, just use email, or just use LinkedIn Messenger, or, you know, just chat to people, because it's not very difficult to find an email address of anyone on the planet if you look hard enough, and just send them a very well crafted email and get the conversation going. If they ignore you, they ignore you, but more often than not, people don't. I mean, the example I use is because we've been really lucky and had a lot of very high profile guests on our podcast. And everyone's like, "Well, how on earth do you get them?" And we just say, "Well, we email them or phone them." That's it. There's no science behind it. We just pick up a phone or send them an email. Well, how'd you find an email address for Mark Webber? And you just go on his website. Just contact us. So he's going to see that at some point if it's important enough, or you've crafted your message in the right way. So, you know, networking, there's so many different ways to do it. And there's lots of little hacks you can use to get email addresses without spending a penny. I think at some point you've just got to not man up and get on with it, but, you know, try and put your fears aside and just give it a go. And if you know that's something you need to do, you're going to have to just pluck up the courage and talk. And once you start talking, the talking doesn't stop. You know, I network every single day and make new contacts every single day. I have today and I will tomorrow. And it doesn't matter whether they're 18 and just starting out, or 60 years old and on the verge of retirement. It doesn't matter, because everyone's got value, and you never know who is going to come at you and say, I have something here that might be of value to you. So I think you've got to embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn for me is definitely something that's a really good tool.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful.
So this is quite a broad question. You can take it anywhere you want. But what advice would you give to young people wanting to work in motorsport?
So I would say, are you talking in terms of my world, as in marketing, sponsorship, or generally, or doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter. Bit of both, maybe.
So I think in my world, which is the world I know, which is sponsorship and marketing and comms and so on, there are two things you can do, which are very, very straightforward and simple. One is just find all the sports marketing agencies on the planet, of which there are several that are very large and very, very good, including Right Formula, and find someone that works there on LinkedIn and send them a message, connect with them, and say, I'd love to pop in for a chat, love to meet for a coffee, doesn't matter who it is, just get your foot in the door, and start talking to them and pick their brains, and people will happily meet you for a drink and chew the fat about their business and what they do. And the second thing is, there are hundreds and hundreds of race teams all around the world, based in all sorts of places, far-flung places. It doesn't matter if you live in New Zealand. You've got a brilliant feeder series out there with the Toyota race series. You've got Rodin Cars based out there, who sponsor Jamie Chadwick, who are building incredible things. There's huge opportunities everywhere. So approach them all, and approach all the F1 teams. Why not? They're always looking for talent. So how many of them are based in the UK? 8, something like that. So if you want to work in Formula One and you're based in the UK, you've got Formula One on your doorstep, in the smack bang in the middle of the country. So no excuses, really. Just get on board with contacting and emailing and networking and LinkedIn and meeting and push your way into the sport, because everybody who wants to work in there are a lot of people that want to work in Formula One. There's a lot of people shouting about it on Twitter. I want to work in F1. I want to get into F1 PR. But we'll go and do it then. Pick up the phone, call one of the teams, get yourself in there. And if you get rejected, move on to the next one. Also, there's some great resources online, and Jenny Gow's producing some brilliant webinars at the moment about employment in motorsport and how to get into certain avenues, whether it's photography, like she's done recently, or marketing, comms and PR. So there's loads of free resources. The Black Book Forum, they have events all the time which are free at the moment because of coronavirus. There are so many avenues. I mean, if I had all these avenues when I started out in motorsport, I'd be so happy. So I think that's how I'd get into it. Then don't rush once you're in there, because you have all the time in the world. Like, people want to go in account exec, but get promoted, become the next thing, get promoted, become the next thing in like a year. It's like, just chill out, just like learn your craft. There's no rush, and just enjoy learning and picking up things, and the progress will come. But if all you're focusing on is the money, go and be a banker, because you've got to do this job if you have a passion for it. Any sports or sponsorship or marketing, you've got to be passionate about it. So you go into it for the long haul, learn your craft and work your way up, and don't be in a rush.
And at the moment, obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So a lot of students are worried about opportunities disappearing. What have you got any advice about, how not to worry about that kind of thing?
Yeah. Okay. Fair. That is totally fair, and it is really challenging at the moment, because there are a lot less opportunities currently right now than there were before the pandemic, clearly, because a lot of brands have decided either to defer or pull out or come out of motorsport altogether, and all those marketing jobs they've dried up and they're really hard to come by. And there was a period of 4 or 5 months where there was nothing, and there was redundancies at all the big agencies, and everyone's trying to get the same jobs, but it's coming back online. So I've seen tons of jobs cropping up recently online, whether that be with race teams like Veloce, who are have boomed through the lockdown period. They received a big investment of over 4 million quid. They're creating jobs all over the place. I see Formula One teams and Formula E teams and Extreme E teams coming online with new jobs all the time. Extreme E have come out of the woodwork in the last 6 months, a year or so. They're a growing organisation. They need to employ people. Formula E, despite a couple of manufacturers pulling out, they know they've got McLaren probably coming in. There's more. There are jobs out there. Yes, the agency work has taken a hit, but there are still opportunities. There's still racing going on. People still need junior engineers and people to come in and come through the ranks. So don't let it dishearten you. You'll just have to try a little bit harder. But in the meantime, if you're studying or you're thinking about getting a job, start building your own portfolio. Perhaps put yourself out for a bit of free work with somebody to offer them something to gain that experience while you wait. Take some qualifications online. There's lots of things you can do. So again, yes, it's a challenging period, but I wouldn't let that be a barrier to your progress.
You mentioned that you're seeing jobs cropping up. Where are you seeing them? Sort of on LinkedIn, on social media? Is there any specific places that are good to look for them?
I see them on mainly LinkedIn, a little bit on Twitter. Mainly those two places, I'd say. 80% LinkedIn, 20% Twitter. And probably just because of the people I follow. I mean, I follow all the race teams and a lot of people from within the race teams, people like you, people who are in the employment side of things, HR managers and so on. If you're someone looking for work and you're not on LinkedIn, you're going to find things a lot harder, and opportunities won't find their way to you. I mean, LinkedIn is so powerful. You've got to be on it if you're looking for employment, as far as I'm concerned, in my industry. There's tons of opportunities on there, and there's loads of jobs. LinkedIn has a jobs board, and it's so easy to network around LinkedIn now that there's tons of opportunity on there.
And finally, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I mean, go and check out Motormouth, everybody. Obviously, have to plug that. So the podcast and the app and the website is all fully functioning, and we've got loads of exciting features on there. We've got some really cool things planned. We've got a karting event coming up later this year when COVID's out the way, with nearly 30 celebrity racing drivers, and it'll be open to members of the public. A website will go live shortly for booking, but there'll be recently ex-Formula One drivers there, and British touring car drivers, and Le Mans, and famous faces from the telly who are going to be in karting teams. So there's the opportunity to race against them, and more details will come out of that soon. And there might also be a sim racing competition which we're hosting through Motormouth. So lots of exciting things happening there. But the podcast, if you just search the Motormouth podcast, you'll find us, of interviews with lots of big names from the world of Formula One and beyond.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. If you do have any suggestions or requests for people for us to interview, please let me know at Izzie Holman, IZZIEHOLMAN, on all my social media, and I'm on LinkedIn too. Until next time.